In 2 days from now, America will elect its next president, its 47th president. And this race between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump is too close to call. It is a very tight race. No pollster has been able to tell definitively who is going to win the election. Now, this election is getting compared to the election in the 60s between JFK and his rival. This is a very, 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 very complicated race. Nobody knows which path will lead which candidate to the White House. And there are multiple paths that have been talked about, which could lead Vice President Kamala Harris to the White House or could lead President Trump to the White House again. Now, about 60 million people in America have already voted. You may wonder how it's possible because the election is on Tuesday, November 5th. But America allows for people to vote early. That it allows for people to go to an election center and cast their ballot, and it also allows people to request a ballot and have their votes mailed in to the election center where they will be tallied and counted on election night. Now let's talk about these swing states. What are these states? These are the states that usually shuffle between voting for a Democrat or a Republican. What does that even mean? Well, there are states in America that are solid red and solid blue. Solid blue meaning, a state that votes for Democrats, and solid red meaning the state that always votes for a Republican. For example, North Dakota, South Dakota, Arkansas, Texas. These are the states that always vote for a Republican candidate regardless of who's in the election. Similarly, you've got state of California, you've got state of Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Washington state. All these states almost every single time in an election cycle vote for a Democratic candidate. It was back in 84 was the first time California, or the last time California actually voted for a Republican candidate in modern election cycle. So let's go back and talk about what these swing states are and what does it even mean. Well, these states they're not as big as California or Texas, but they are very important because they all add up to the math of 270. Now, this 270 number is a very important number. This basically assures by the Constitution of America that if you are able to get to 270 electoral college votes, you win the election. So the state of Pennsylvania, state of Michigan, state of Wisconsin, state of Minnesota, state of Arizona, and to some extent Georgia are in play. And what does that mean? It means that both the candidates are spending a lot of money, time, energy, effort doing events in these states because the polling in these states is too close. Nobody knows who's ahead. One poll may say that Trump is leading by a point. The other poll may come back and say, no, it's Harris who's actually leading by a point. It is very close. And this is exactly why both the candidates have been traveling and crisscrossing this battleground states in the past 3 weeks or so. We've seen Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania at least 13 times. And she's not done yet. She's going to be there again. Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate have done Pennsylvania more than 22 times. And that's very, very, very big number of any candidate going to Pennsylvania in modern times. Similarly, President Biden has been going to counties in Pennsylvania. He's going to counties in Arizona, in Georgia, in North Carolina, in all these swing states. And also he's amped up his ad spending in states like Minnesota and Wisconsin because the race is really close. Now, it all remains to be seen what happens. The mood of the nation essentially is, dependent on voting on these candidates. And it's going to be domestic sentiment that is going to drive the election this year. A lot of people have talked about how inflation, immigration, abortion, economy are the biggest issue in this election cycle. People talk about how the country has opened immigration borders. People talk about how people should let, all these people come in. They talk about how people should have access, women should have access to abortion, versus people say that, we're too liberal when it comes to abortion and we should probably not have those kind of access. The people talk about inflation and how inflation has made their lives difficult, while Democrats talk about how inflation has been down and it was up only due to COVID. These are the domestic issues on which both the candidates are fighting in this election cycle, and whoever is able to convince those independent voters, those swing state voters in those 7 states that I talked about, is going to become the next president of United States. Rohit Sharma for India Today in Washington, D.C.